Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Lumière Learning Monday. And believe it or not, this is season 4, episode 8, and a long awaited moment with Abhijit Pradhan. Abhijit, thank you so much for coming on to this Lumière Learning Monday and doing this chat with me.
Super excited, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm like super impressed with season 4 and all of that. Like, wow, amazing.
I
Amazing.
have seen your YouTube videos and known and seen your work for the longest. So Abhijit is has been client, he's been friend, he's an associate, he's someone I look up to as someone who understands learning, someone who gets excellence and pushing full throttle with passion. And I cannot wait to bring out his story to all of us. I'm really really happy. Abhijit, rewind right now. Superstar, you said super 3 times, so obviously there's something about the word super that gets you.
100%. So I think it's not about incremental, but literally exponential value. And I think that's where the name Superstar came from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you know the genesis of the name, but uh,
Tell us.
so it's 15 years old almost. And when I started, I was in the business side, as you know, and I was always into brands and strategies. And somewhere in the last 4 years of my corporate stint, I realized that my true passion was actually people, which I was never conscious of. So when I got that epiphany, I started honing that. And that was like training, on the job before I actually kind of, went off on my own to become a coach, which in 2008 was not heard of. And I think in 2023, still not necessarily heard of yet, you know. But the point is that I realized that I could help unlock people's potential, okay, by bringing my passion itself and adding perspective, so I in fact put in for registration the name Inspire initially, and it
Uh-huh.
just wasn't going through. So I don't know what I was just thinking, and some voice inside messaged, whispered in my head saying Superstar. And I said to
Ah.
my wife Sarita, let's try Superstar. And boom boom, it just went through.
Oh.
And
Wow.
I realized that it carried energy. And by the way, the intent behind the name is there's a superstar in every one of us,
Yeah.
and I really believe that. I've always believed it, and it's a question of maybe a nudge here and a push there, or maybe a perspective change, but something can unlock that superstar within. And that's the name, that's the reason for the name. So that's the genesis story.
No, and I still remember. I have experienced this. I experienced how much you believe in potential and intent, and I know that the times that we worked, you knew we were doing something like this for the very first time, whether it was the Bazi project or the Sony project and the Sony Music project, and you gave space, you allowed the experience to unfold, and I think you trusted. And I think for anybody that works with you, Abhijit, the fact that you can understand, spot the potential, and more importantly see that there is a spark in everybody just waiting to be ignited, and I think that's yours, really your superpower. And I'm really happy to have known you for all these years. One of the first another thing that I learned from you for the first time was the term epigenetics, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was again those many years ago, and I think you went away to Singapore, or you went to learn coaching, and I think there was that phase of your journey
I
on
think
learning.
you're referring to Emergenetics. The
Emergenetics,
Yes, yes.
emergenetics, yes.
Epigenetics is also another part of my life, which is the biohacking dimension, but it goes beyond what is there, in our genetic blueprint. So it's not that we are kind of, this is it and this is your destiny, but it's got potential, and that is actually true at a DNA level. There is
Wow.
potential encoded within, but it's how you express it which takes you into that next level of whatever you want to express. So
Yeah,
it really comes from that. But
yeah.
what you're referring to, I'm assuming, is emergent.
Emergenetics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that was a psychometric tool which I had started using as part of my coaching, etc.,
Coaching,
etc.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And did it also not have something to do with, again, there's this almost like an ESP part to you. There is a larger part to you that you're connecting with, in a sense.
So the reason why I got fascinated, and everything starts for me from a book. So
Mm.
for me, it's like people go to the temple for like divine inspiration. I used to go to bookshops. Unfortunately, there are much fewer now, right? But I would go to a bookshop and I would get messages. I would get a book, and I had picked up this book called Emogenetics. Okay,
Mm.
it must be in 2010 or whatever, written
Yeah,
by a lady called Dr. Gail Browning, and I
yeah.
love the approach. And basically, it said that every one of us has natural preferences in terms of how we like to think and how we like to behave. Okay.
Uh,
So I loved it, Googled it, found out they had a presence in India somewhere. Then I went and got myself trained and certified. So that's a long and short story of that little chapter. But it was a very simple tool, and I have used that tool in my coaching. I used that tool as part of a book project that happened because of that tool, with about some 200, 250 people. Okay. And it was so simple for people to get,
hmm.
and that's the reason why I really kind of, uh, really love that. So,
But when did you discover that there's such a huge learner in you? When did that piece uh, open? Were you always like a very nerdy kid? Does it go back to school and college? And,
okay. So, my wife would probably not accept this because she thinks I'm a nerd. Uh, but, and she thinks I'm a researcher, okay, not
yeah.
in competition with you. But actually, for me, it's not just about getting an insight, but it's about putting an insight into action and seeing it kind of take shape in reality, and that's the biggest high for me. So I
Hmm.
like an idea and I pick it up from various places, but I am not a narrow deep researcher kind of a person. I
Yeah.
like to take something which inspires me, excites me, and I like to put into immediate action. So I
Hmm.
learn from that, actually speaking. So that's my way of dealing, making sense of the world and things like that. So and this is never conscious for me.
Okay.
So it's always about something fascinates me, and that will remain in my life only if I have tested it out in some way or the other.
And
So
these interests stay with you, like the emergenetics, or the work that you started. They stay with you for a period of time, and then I see that there is something new that you have posted on Facebook, or there's like TTT, coffee, 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 running, running, running. So then it's like a tree. It's like, there's many, many branches to this learning. So tell us a little bit about that piece, and how do you stay on the excellence track? I mean, how does one make time for this? And, how do you
okay,
remember? How do you,
okay. So I guess there are two questions over there. So let me grapple with the first one. So the first bit is basic insight into me is I get bored very easily.
uh,
Okay. So I have to find something fascinating in whatever I'm doing, and that's the motivation behind finding newer and newer dimensions in whatever I'm doing.
so fascinating in whatever you're doing,
In
irrespective
whatever.
of the subject, the
Yeah,
fascination is the operative word here.
absolutely, absolutely. So, and okay, maybe this is my gift, but I am not wedded to a narrow vertical saying that okay, it's running. It's not like that for me.
Ah,
Running is a means to engage my passion and learning and perspective. So it's a vehicle. So
nice.
till running manages to keep blowing my mind, it will be there. It's as simple as that. Okay. And so again, running was the same thing. It's like in my life, in my earlier part of my life, I had never done anything physical. So when I about 12, 13 years ago, I got into this journey of turning my health around, and as a result of which, I lost a lot of weight. And then I say, hey, because I'm feeling much more healthy than I've ever been, maybe I can do things I've never done before. So again, it was an idea which I wanted to put into action, and
Hmm.
running was that. testing out that idea that can I use my newfound health to actually kind of manifest into something I've never done before. So I started with running, and then it just kept on and on. Is I've never run for more than 30 seconds in my life without huffing and puffing and all of those things. I used to smoke and all those, all the beautiful habits that one picks up. And I said, wow, I can run 5 kilometers. Oh, wow, I can run 10 kilometers. And it kept on going till I did half marathons, full marathons, till I finally injured my knee attempting a ultra marathon. So that's
Oh,
where the
wow.
journey actually stopped. But you're right. So there's a we keep saying people are in pursuit of passion. Uh, so there was a book, I forget the author's name right now, but it's the passion of pursuit which drives me.
Ah,
So there is
okay.
something which I love, that chase of finding something new and something which I couldn't imagine existed in front of me you know so coffee, by the way, has lasted for 9 years. And I don't know if so most people don't understand why I'm passionate about coffee. Nothing to do with, and by the way, I never used to drink coffee in my life
Oh,
before. I was not
acha.
a coffee drinker. Okay. So my fascination with coffee is experiencing flavors, the natural flavors in the coffee bean, exactly like what people get in a wine tasting journey.
Hmm.
For example, you may, depending on the terroir and how it's roasted and farmed, etc., you may get watermelon flavor, you might get strawberry flavor, etc., etc. So every day I brew to test what flavor am I getting.
Ah.
So it's a daily blowing my mind, which is why coffee has kind of retained my attention for a very, very long time. And I always find a new brewing tool, something to unlock that flavor a little better. So then I'm
Hmm.
always excited to keep, trying that out. You know. So
But it's also not that you'll become an addict. You are a researcher. You are experimenting. You're searching. You're
yes.
probably recording.
So you mentioned the word excellence. So it's not about excellence for me. It's just that it's the next level of blowing my mind. So I
Okay.
can't I can't stay with status quo. Let me put it that way. Yeah,
Hmm.
there has to be continuous improvement, if not blowing my mind ideally, but at least improvement. So whether you take the Japanese kaizen, right, there has to be something better than what I did yesterday. So whether it was running, and in fact this was so when I started, this was 2010. Okay. And at that time, Apple had just done a partnership with Nike, and they'd come up with that sensor they put in the shoe, which
Huh.
connected with your iPhone. So I ran in Joggers Park, and I ran for 5 kilometers. And of course, in those days, uh, Neil Armstrong was a great hero. So I suddenly heard his voice on the headphones, on the earphones, saying, "Hey, you just ran 5 kilometers. That's a great achievement." I was like, "Whoa, Neil, Neil is congratulating me." So then I said, "Hey, I need to hear this again." So then the next run, I did 10 kilometers. And then I heard another message. So I was like, "Wow." And then I told, in fact, I was coaching somebody, and that person was a marathon runner. And she said, Abhi, people don't run 5, 10. You go gradually. Otherwise, your body will break down. So I said, oh, oops. So the next run, I was going to do 15. Then I stopped myself at 13.69 or whatever. But,
So
that bit excited me. So, like, wow, there's something to unlock. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Level,
yeah.
the next level, leveling up, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I'm just going back to your days in advertising and brands and strategy, because there again, there is always something new. There is you're sort of pushing the limits of what you can do with the brand, how the client can get excited, or what the business can get by an outcome. But somewhere you discovered that it was not advertising for you. So again, there was that like one moment where you said, the this is not advertising, but this has to be coaching. Was it like that, or you were sort of somewhere feeling that there is probably something different that I ought to do? I mean, how did you come to
So,
this coaching part?
I have been in music. You mentioned Sony Music. I have been in entertainment. I have been in the famous or infamous ABCL. Okay.
Yeah,
I launched Foster's, the beer
yeah,
in India, which was a very, very successful launch. And of course, like, I've been in account planning and advertising. And
yeah,
I've
yeah.
also been in media in Times of India as well as in Midday. So, before I went on to the media side, uh, I had this question: what am I? What am I really passionate about? And what's that thread? And this was, I
Mm.
think, 2003-ish, 4-ish, when LinkedIn
Mm.
had just come in, etc. And it had that beautiful feature called recommendations. So I said, okay, so if I don't have clarity, maybe those recommendations that I keep getting, maybe they can give me some sense. And I
Mm.
expected to read, oh, brand and strategy and something, and it wasn't that at all. It was actually two things. He says wherever Abhijit goes, he goes in a lot of energy, and second, he helps people realize the potential they never realized they had. And I was like, oh my god. So actually it was unconscious till that point, and I said, that's so true. So, and the other part of the theme was I would love challenges.
Ah,
So it was never about, hey, I'm just joining a huge place and to just be a part of it. I loved it when there was danger, there was something to turn around, there was, bring people back to the level of greatness or whatever. And I thrived on that, you know.
mm.
So so I realized those were the characteristics. And with that clarity, my last 4 years, which I was mentioning earlier, in my corporate stint, I actually focused on people and helping unlock their potential. And I was shocked that the business result was literally 10x compared to maybe, when I was just thinking about the brand or strategy or sales or whatever.
That's
And
deep, huh?
yeah, and
That's
I
deep.
realized that when I'm focusing on that, the outcome, which I was not focusing on, was actually far, far better. And
I think you worked with Ronnie Screwvala at that time. There was something that you had done.
that was a very short one, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
But
my
this is fantastic, and even to go that route of looking at recommendations, and then no, I don't think many people would think like that. This so that's the curious Abhijit. I think curiosity with a big C, capital C.
definitely, definitely. So, curious, beginner's mind. I forget the Japanese name for that, but I think to me that's always been there. And I think I inherited this from my mother.
Uh,
She was inherently curious, and and I think that allows me to always. So there's passion, and then there's perspective,
yeah, yeah,
because I always know there's another side to something which I
yeah.
may not be seeing at that moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, and you make yourself so vulnerable in the process of not knowing and then going through it, uh, like full steam ahead. You don't know what the dangers lie, like 10 to 15 kilometers.
There's a quote which I use in my workshops, by the way, and to get people in the right frame of mind, one of
Mhm.
the stimuli that I use is a quote from a quantum physicist called Fred Allen Wolf, and he says, "The beauty or the trick of life is in the mystery, not in the know." KNOW.
Yeah.
Then I ask people, what do you think that means? And then I say, if we are in the know, what do you think? Is our mind open or is it closed? And unfortunately, when we think, oh, we know this, right? Boom, right? Whereas, what am I missing? What do I not know? Oh man, that's a beautiful journey. And I think that, and by the way, Mark Zuckerberg called himself whatever, I am CEO, BBB, whatever, on his visiting card when he started Facebook. So I called myself Chief Explorer because I
Nice.
really believed in that. It just
Yeah,
came very naturally to me.
yeah. I think very much on code for you, the explorer,
Absolutely.
because the quest is relentless, and for you, really, I think it's the quest uh,
Yes.
that excites
Happiness
you,
of
and
pursuit.
happiness of person. Truly, truly, truly. Well said. You have, when Abhijit and I were talking, and we were thinking that, what do we call this? And we really were trying to unlock what is the learning code, you know, and the learning code in these times, so important. So, Abhijit, what's your take on learning? Because I do the Learning Monday. I want people to get excited about learning. I want them to learn about learning. I want them to meet people like you to get inspired. How do you do it, and what do you think young people or anybody who's watching, anybody young in mind, young at heart, and open, needs to do vis-a-vis their learning and their learning journey?
So first observation is I think people have finally accepted that, oh, learning doesn't end, when you finish your schooling and, all of that. And learning is a continuous process. But unfortunately, they leave it as a nice baseline, but not necessarily as a action. So, firstly,
Action.
I would equate it to a practice like yoga or exercise. I think learning needs to be incorporated in life like that. It's a proactive practice which keeps you going. The same way exercise does whatever it does for you, this, learning does for you in many, many ways. Mental as well as obviously relevance. So I think to me, it's not that I learned, therefore I will get a job, but I learn because that's a part of me, and that's what I mean by practice. So I think that to me is a very critical part of learning. um, what do you learn, how do you learn, again comes back to what makes you tick as a person. You talked about the learning code, right? Now remember I said that while I love to read a book and get inspired by, let's say, an idea, I also like to immediately put it into practice, because then it gives me fulfillment that yes, this is an idea worth pursuing. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's my way of doing it.
Correct.
Now others, like maybe my wife, she would take an idea when someone trusted tells her about it, and that's good enough.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so for her that may be a source of learning. you know so again I'm saying, is learning good to do? No, I think it's crucial to do. And I think in
Ah,
today's time you cannot not learn. It's like this. You may have gone through school education and all of that, and I think there's a stage in life where a lot of my friends, they become parents, and then you start learning again, because now, thanks to educating your child, you have to literally start your education all over again, isn't it?
yeah.
So that whole change in mindset, to me, the way I see those parents, because if they're not grasping that same subject, they may have done it 20 years back. The child is going to know that, hey, hang on, this is not something that my mom is excited about. Why should I be learning it? So you have to embody that. you know so similar example is, you know I think the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Yeah.
Because you don't
Correct.
have a choice but to be authentic with it. Otherwise it's very theoretical. So in fact, uh, when I and yet another example of me learning, um, so when I got into running, right, I had to know running at a different level, so there were different books and all that. And then I got fascinated with this body of running knowledge or approach called chi running. So
Ah,
basically it meant,
cheese as in energy.
yes,
Chi.
CHI. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a person called Danny Dreyer who basically said that instead of taking effort and using muscle power, how do you use the flow of energy to help you run? Let
Okay.
it kind of do a bit of the heavy lifting, literally gravity. So your pose and your position and how you run can actually be 70% or 60% effort and balance energy and flow you know so I got fascinated with that, and I got the book, and I saw some videos here and there, but it still wasn't enough. So then I started googling as usual, and I had already signed up to run my first full marathon. I had done the halves, so I had another story, but I had signed up for the Chicago marathon because I saw a documentary on these runners trying to go for the Chicago marathon. But anyway, um, I signed up for the Chi running course. Okay, this was taught in Asheville, North Carolina, for the teachers training course. Because see, there was a regular course for runners, whatever. But I said that the teachers training course meant that they would get into it in depth, in a way that would not happen in a regular kind of 1 day thing, and you just get out of it, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But the teachers training forces you to be true to it at a totally different level. So I never taught it, but the point was that I wanted to be it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's I just feel that it, if you don't commit to learning, it'll not give back.
Yes. Yes. I
So
think that is what it is. It is the commitment to learning,
yeah, yeah,
and you're not even doing it for it to give back. You're doing it for the love of it at that
absolutely,
time.
absolutely. And so one part is the decision to learn. Okay. The second part is, why are you learning? what you're learning, and maybe the different things you need to learn, etc. And the third part, and this is very important, I think I read this in a book by Robin Sharma some 10, 15 years back, saying you might have whatever purpose and you might have whatever strategy, but if it is not on your calendar, on your day to day, somewhere slotted in, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to make space for it in your life, you know?
Tell me, like, there's also this whole part where it's hard work. So you really have to be very gritty and, stay on course. Has it happened to you that you gave up a learning journey because something got too hard?
Okay, so, okay, here's the thing. We salute a lot of people for their willpower. And a lot of people, in fact, do that to me. Okay, oh, you have so much willpower, Abhijit. You're very disciplined and all of that. But trust me, it's not that. You know, I don't, and this is a scientific fact. Okay, willpower can only start a journey. It can never complete it. It doesn't have that. It's like random access memory for people who know computers at that level. That's it. But the supercomputer, which is our subconscious, which actually completes the journey, it is the part which is crucial to actually take it through. So what that basically means is that once I program my supercomputer well, it takes charge and it happens, as they say, as a no-brainer activity. Then I'm not fighting every day. I have to get up. I have to do this. So I have to find a way for it to become second nature. And when it does, like I said, it'll go into your schedule. It'll do whatever. You will. It's happening automatically. In fact, it's almost like, in fact, it's called the power of habit. So there's a book by Charles Duhigg. Now there are a lot of books on that entire thing. So when you get habit to drive it for you, you don't have to worry about, oh my god, am I going to learn today? No, you just have to create a system of habit.
Yeah, right. That's also what James Clear writes in Atomic
Absolutely.
Habits about.
Absolutely. So, this is again about 10, 12 years back when I was doing this whole workshop thing. It came from Emogenetics, and it was something called a superstar code. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, I started getting frustrated when a lot of people would come back to me and say, Abhijit, I tried the secret. It didn't work for me. And implying that they were the reason and they were the failure. And that is
Mm.
to me. And I was like, maybe hang on. Maybe that's not meant for you. Maybe you have another way of making success work or whatever it is, right? So that got me thinking, and I started noticing this again consciously, that everybody has their own inherent innate success formula. Okay, you may not have consciously figured it out. Like, for example, I told you that I like to get inspired and then I need to put it into action. So that's part of my code, if I may call it that.
Yeah.
So I would answer the code with three questions. Okay, what makes you tick, which is what is natural to you. Okay, which basically means what are your strengths, what are your passions. Okay, all those things. um, how do you use that to engage with the external world? How do you take on goals, etc.? The battle, right? The third is, how do you make it stick? Tick,
Yeah.
tick, stick. Stick is the sustaining part. All right. So remember, I told you that I get bored very easily. So
Yeah.
I always have to consciously have a stick strategy. Otherwise,
Correct.
otherwise I'll never stick, to anything. So, so it's important that one realizes, firstly, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Then the how is the code to get you there. Yeah.
And tell me, do you, and I know we are going to close very shortly, but this can be a really long conversation. That what has taken you the longest in terms of reaching that level of mastery that you were seeking by way of a subject, by way of an area of work, or is some learning an ongoing process? Like coffee for you is still ongoing in the
So I
learning.
think the longest ever has honestly been my own company, the Superstar thing, because I realized that there are so many dimensions and there's so many angles of excellence or whatever it is, and
Hmm.
uh, and I think that, and I consider myself a beginner, and I get
Wow.
excited about being that beginner, and when I feel that, then I know that there's a long journey ahead, and long exciting journey, not as a challenge or something intimidating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important to unlock, like I was telling you earlier, the support system is your subconscious brain.
Yeah.
So once you get that alignment between conscious and subconscious,
Yeah.
things flow.
Yeah, I love the way you say that it's almost like an ally for your learning, for your and again you gave the example of running and how 40% was done by the force, this superconscious that is actually leading you and helping you finish. So I
Yeah,
think that's important. That maybe you can start with inspiration,
yeah.
but it's really, I think that the US Navy SEALs also has this saying: anybody can be a beginner, anybody can start something, but not everyone can finish. So we are the finishers. So they actually have something which says we are the finishers.
So in fact, the Navy SEALs, 90% of how they complete is the training. They have trained so much that they just have to get out of their way. So when they get out of their mind's way, is when the action starts happening. And when our subconscious gets that opportunity to execute. And okay, let me give you a little insight on the subconscious brain. The subconscious brain is not a judgmental brain. It is not going to judge whether what you're doing is right or wrong. It will execute thinking this is the command that you've given. So a lot of people think that that's the command they've given their subconscious, but an opposite behavior starts happening. So for
Mm.
example, I say I want to be a great learner, but inside I have doubt that, oh, I can never be that. So the subconscious is either getting mixed signals, or it's not, in fact, getting the opposite one. So when you finally kind of give that proper programming, and that is the critical part, it's the programming. Okay, and in today's AI, generative AI world, it's the prompt. If I give the right prompt, you will get the right outcome, from whether it is Bing or Bard or whatever. So it's very critical to spend time on the programming, on the prompt. And I think that's very crucial in learning, in taking learning to the next level, or whatever it is. It's very important that one spends time on that bit. As they say, a journey well begun. So that's that well begun part.
Yeah, which is half done, but hopefully will get done.
Not necessarily with effort. If you make that one step right, it will happen automatically. How much time do you have? Otherwise I'll just elaborate on that last point.
Yeah, yeah. Just elaborate. I
So
busted time, but I want people to get that.
I'll give you an example of how the subconscious can make things like a no-brainer. So this was book writing project, and by the way, I loved researching, interviewing people for the book, but I hated the whole task of putting it all down and the draft and all of that. That was terrible for me. So while I was doing that entire thing, I picked up something called tiny habits. So you heard about mini habits and all of that, and James Clear, who talks about all those things. But much before, there was BJ Fogg. He's a behavioral scientist from Stanford, and he came up with something called tiny habits. And basically two things. One is when you make the behavior a no-brainer. So for example, you don't brush your teeth in the night. So instead of doing this elaborate thing, just brush your teeth for 10 seconds. Okay, that's one example. Second, what he says is anchor this new behavior that you want to create to an existing strong habit or behavior already there. So it just rides like a wave surfing. Okay. So what I did was, at that time I was into tea. I was exploring tea, and I used to love having my tea in the morning. So I said, okay, let me write one para of my book while having tea. That's it. And I would stop myself after the one para, because then I would have gotten excited and all that. I actually finished off that first draft in 2 weeks. I sent it
Oh.
off. I sent it off, and then I had withdrawal symptoms. Okay, so I was having my tea, and I said, I need to write something. So I started writing on my blog. So, but literally, it created a habit. So it became a no-brainer. And I'm saying these are small hacks that I think if we incorporate in our life. So in all my workshops, when I started talking about tiny habits, everyone tried this, because it's actually very easy to do. And
Yeah.
by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this subject, but I was researching on learning, since you asked me about learning, and I came up with this. There's a whole subject on micro learning, right? So people think learning is this huge investment. I need to now enroll in, if I am in a company, I need to get into executive education with Harvard, ISB, etc. No, hang on. Of course there are courses with the Coursera and all that we have, but even beyond that, okay, an example of micro learning is Duolingo, right? So you learn a language and you do it bite by bite, chunk by chunk, maybe for 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And when you do that and you enjoy doing that, it creates a habit. So they
Correct.
normally say 21 days and all that, but broadly speaking, when you keep doing it for a certain period of time, it becomes a habit. So
Yeah.
I created a habit on walking because of my biohacking side of life. I realized that I was trying out this thing called
So everyone's listening is going to say biohacking. I just heard something, a new term. Abhijit, tell me what biohacking means.
biohacking is really understanding your self, your physical, your health as a system, and to kind of figure out what is affecting it, and then hacking, which means using that knowledge to make changes and testing out how those changes work to better your health. Simple as that. Okay. So one of the hacks or approaches was blood sugar monitoring. So you may be aware that there are these things called CGMs, which are continuous glucose monitoring patches that you put on your hand or whatever, which gives you insight into how your blood sugar kind of, how it goes up and down. Spikes are not good. Consistency is good generally. Nothing to do with diabetes. I can be diabetic. My mother was diabetic, but I like to kind of keep it in check. So I was doing that, and what I realized, as a simple behavior and test kind of a thing, was after I eat, my blood sugar would spike. But within 10 minutes, if I took a walk for 20 minutes, it would easily come back. So
Ah.
what I did was, I love reading, but I always have this struggle. I used to have the struggle of, when do I read? There's a project going on. When do I get time? So what I did was, I switched to audiobooks. Okay.
Mhm.
I started listening to that audiobook for 20 minutes while I walked.
Ah.
And now today, it's been a year and a half. I do this twice a day after every lunch or dinner. And it's a habit. I can't not do it. So even if I'm traveling, even if I'm in the airport, I will do that 20-minute walk and listen to something, ideally an
Mm.
audiobook. So I have been able to finish books like I've never done before in my life.
Oh,
And double whammy, right? It's also helping my the
yeah.
walking and therefore the sugar or whatever you want to call it. So this is an example of a tiny habit made into a no-brainer kind of a thing, and it definitely ups my learning quotient because I'm able to consume books like never before.
So, like we have IQ, EQ, we also have LQ.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely,
And I think that's also now the survival code to be able to keep learning.
absolutely. Because the thing is, the pace at which change is happening today. Earlier, change was always happening, but the pace and the dramatic exponential impact of that change,
Yeah.
it means that you have to figure out a way to be ahead of the curve, not trying to catch up, right? So you can't just go narrow learning within your, let's call it, domain. You have to pull back, and you have to say what's going on at a broad level, and somehow build some habits in terms of curiosity and all that, so that tomorrow you can be valuable in ways you never thought you could be, you know so it's like a teacher cannot just be fantastic at teaching. You have to understand generative artificial intelligence today. You have to understand the new generation kids socially. So if you're not kind of learning that, you will be left behind, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Just amazing. Abhijit, I could go, we could go on and on, but we always have another episode and another season. So I'm never unhappy if I have to close a talk with my guest. And well, this is the beginning. You have given us many things to mull over, be it tiny habits, emergenetics, the superstar code, and more importantly, I think uh, just that the passion and the enthusiasm that you have, which is so fresh, so childlike, and always raring to go. So I feel so delighted that we've been able to do this talk. And I mean, guys, in the link we'll also put links to more talks by Abhijit, really interesting stuff that you should go and listen to. Abhijit Pradhan, once again, thank you for being the superstar you are.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to share. And you just got me going, so now I have to keep quiet now and keep calm.
Walk for 20
I
minutes
know.
for the hike.
That's that's true. That's true. Thank you so much, Deepa. Yeah,
Thank you.
and
Lovely, lovely, lovely conversation, Abhijit.
thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Thanks.